Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My parents denied me help when I was pregnant and homeless. Now they show up unannounced at my door after 5 years without knowing my daughter. 5 years ago, my life completely fell apart. My husband left me when I was 8 months pregnant. We had been married for 3 years and I thought our relationship was perfect. He had always been affectionate and attentive, the kind of man who would bring me flowers for no apparent reason or stay up late watching reality TV with me even though I hated it. Everything changed about 6 months after I got pregnant. He became distant, started working late, and was constantly checking his phone. At first I thought it was just nerves about becoming a father. Sometimes men panic about this situation, but I couldn't have been more wrong. One day I came home from a routine prenatal checkup, excited to show him the ultrasound image. But when I opened the door, the apartment was almost empty. Half of our belongings had disappeared, and there was only a note on the kitchen counter. It said that he wasn't ready for this life, and that he had moved in with his girlfriend of 6 months. 6 months. That means that while I was pregnant, he had been seeing someone else practically the whole time. I couldn't even process what was happening. I was devastated. And devastated doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. It was as if someone had literally ripped my heart out and stomped on it. To make matters worse, I was unemployed. I had left my job as a teacher a few months earlier because the complications of my pregnancy were very serious. I was constantly ill, nauseous, dizzy, and simply unable to function normally. Working was out of the question, so there I was, unemployed, without a partner, and with a baby on the way. We were renting our apartment, and there was no way I could afford it on my own. I had some savings, but honestly, they weren't going to last very long. The idea of having to figure all this out on my own was terrifying. I spent the next few days in a kind of mental fog trying to take in what had happened. The anger came later, but for the first few days I couldn't even concentrate enough to be angry. All I could think about was how I was going to survive the next few months. I wasn't prepared for any of this. I didn't even know where to start. What was I supposed to do now? I remember just sitting on the living room floor staring at nothing and crying. It wasn't a calm, quiet cry. It was the kind of cry where you can barely breathe between sobs, as if your body can't even keep up with how much pain you're feeling. I cried until I was completely exhausted, and then I did the one thing I had been avoiding. I called my parents. Now, a little bit about my family. My parents are well off. My father is a dentist, my mother is a real estate agent, and they have always lived comfortably. Their house in the suburbs of Massachusetts is huge. 4 bedrooms, lots of space. But when I was growing up, they weren't the affectionate type, more the strict love type. But in my mind, I thought, this is it. I'm in crisis. I need help. They'll support me, won't they? So I explained the whole situation to them, how my husband had left me, how I was pregnant, and how I didn't know where to go or what to do next. I asked them if I could move back in with them, just until I got back on my feet. I thought they would at least offer me some compassion, but instead I got a resounding no, and here's the most incredible thing. It wasn't because they couldn't make room for me. They had more than enough. It wasn't because they were experiencing financial difficulties, far from it. They said no because they didn't want my problems to affect my younger sister, Claire. Claire was 24 at the time, finishing her last year of medical school, and apparently having a crying baby around could ruin her concentration and jeopardize her future. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just a rejection, it was a ruthless rejection, with no empathy or understanding of what I was going through. They didn't want to interrupt Claire's perfect life. Meanwhile, I was trying to pick up the pieces of mine. That moment when I realized that they weren't going to help me hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the total lack of support when I needed it most. And it was a reminder that my family's idea of helping was more about their comfort than my needs. I had always known that they had this strict love mentality, but I didn't think it would extend to a situation like this when I was literally struggling to survive. I begged them. I told them I would stay in the basement. I promised I would be quiet and do my best not to be a burden. I even said I would contribute financially once I returned to work, but they wouldn't budge. My mother actually suggested that I consider giving the baby up for adoption because I was clearly in no condition to raise a child. At that moment, I knew it was over. I hung up and haven't called them since. What followed was without doubt the most difficult year of my life. I found a small, rundown studio apartment in a dangerous part of town and moved in. I applied for every government assistance program I could qualify for. Food stamps, Medicaid, whatever it took. I gave birth to my beautiful daughter Rainey all by myself. My ex didn't even show up, which wasn't surprising since she had already given up her parental rights in exchange for never having to pay child support. Desperate times, desperate decisions, right? Those first few months with Rainey were brutal. I was up all night with her, then working online, tutoring when she slept. Eventually, I started taking substitute teaching jobs when I could afford a babysitter. It was a real juggling act. And I was constantly on the verge of exhaustion, but somehow we made it through. Fast forward to now, and things are much better. Rainey is about to start kindergarten, and she is the most amazing little girl. She is curious, kind, and has this great infectious laugh that lights up any room. I have also managed to rebuild my career as a teacher. After all, I did somehow get back to work, and I even now have a permanent position at a really good school. It wasn't easy, but I've worked really hard, and now it feels like all that hard work is paying off. We live in this cozy 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and it feels like a real home. I even have some savings put away for emergencies. Life isn't perfect, but it's stable. And the best part is that these are my achievements. I've built this life for Rainey and for me, and it feels good. But last week, out of the blue, I received an email from my parents. I almost didn't recognize the name in my inbox, and I was really surprised. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times they've communicated with me in the last 5 years. Anyway, the email starts with an update on her life. Apparently my perfect sister, their pride and joy, has just finished her residency and got a high-profile job at a prestigious hospital in California. Oh, and apparently she's too busy to visit more than once a year, doesn't call them much, and is living her best life in San Francisco. Meanwhile, my parents, now in their mid-60s, feel lonely and forgotten. The email goes on about how they've been doing a lot of soul-searching about their past mistakes. I guess it's good that they're acknowledging it, and they mention how much they miss me and Rainey. And for context, Rainey is 7 now, and they've never met her. Basically, they begged us to spend Christmas with them. And then, here's the most surprising part. They offered to set up a college fund for Rainey. In theory, that might sound good, right? But how can I just forget everything they put me through? Do they think an email and a college fund can erase years of pain? When I got pregnant, they couldn't have rejected me faster. They didn't want to disrupt my sister's future or interfere with her studies. They left me to figure everything out on my own. No help, no support, nothing. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep because I didn't know how I was going to get through it. I had to choose between buying diapers or food for myself. Rainey and I spent so many birthdays and holidays alone, and now all of a sudden they want to play at being devoted grandparents. I can't just act like nothing has happened. Part of me wants to write to them and express it all. I want them to understand how much they hurt me. I want them to know that Rainey doesn't even know what she's missing, because she's been surrounded by my amazing friends. People who have become her honorary aunts and uncles have given her the love and support I never received from my own parents. But then there's this other part of me that wonders if I'm being too inflexible. They're getting older now. Rainey deserves to know her grandparents, doesn't she? But then, does she really deserve it? Do I want to allow people who are willing to leave us to our fate to come back into our lives just because they're feeling lonely now? I haven't replied yet. I'm really torn. A big part of me just wants to ignore the email completely and leave it unanswered. But then another part of me wants to reply with all the bitterness I've been holding in for years and tell them exactly where they can stick their college fund. So I guess that's where I am now. Am I the bad guy for just ignoring them, or am I being too stubborn and not giving them another chance? I really don't know what to do. It's been driving me crazy trying to figure it out. Update 1. First of all, I just want to thank everyone who commented and messaged me after I shared my story. I honestly didn't expect so many people to relate to what I went through. Their responses were this mix of comforting, validating, and honestly somewhat eye-opening. I have read every comment, some more than once, and I cannot express how much their advice has helped me to resolve this complicated issue. Anyway, this is what has happened since then. After days of overthinking and reliving all the problems from 5 years ago, I finally decided to reply to my parents' email. It wasn't easy. I wrote something, deleted it, rewrote it, and still felt it wasn't right. I wanted to be honest without coming across as too harsh, but I didn't want to sugarcoat anything either. In the end, I kept it brief and to the point. I told them that I needed time to process their message and that I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive or even trust them yet. I also made it very clear that Rainey was my top priority and that I wouldn't allow her to be part of any drama or half-baked efforts. Their response? Wow, it was a 5-paragraph guilt trip wrapped in a thin layer of apology. They started by saying sorry again. I guess they score points for consistency. But then it quickly devolved into this long justification session. My dad wrote about how their hands were tied back then, because Claire's future was at stake, and they had to make a difficult decision. He even said that they thought I was strong enough to work things out on my own and didn't realize how much I had been hurting. And then my mom jumped in and mentioned how they have been praying for me and Rainey every day and hoped that I would understand their position now that I am a mother too. Really? I sat there reading, getting angrier and angrier. They thought I was strong enough. That's like throwing someone at the bottom of a pool and saying, "Oh, you'll be fine, you're a good swimmer," as they literally drown. And all that stuff about praying for us, that's nice, but maybe they could have tried to do something practical instead of crossing their fingers and hoping that someone else would fix what they broke. And let's talk about their supposedly difficult decision. They didn't just make a difficult decision, they made the decision that was most comfortable for themselves. They chose the path of least resistance, supporting Claire and cutting me off completely, because it was more convenient for them. They didn't just abandon me. They abandoned Rainey too. And now, after all this time, I'm supposed to feel sorry for them because they're alone? I haven't responded yet, honestly. I don't even know if I will. Part of me feels like I should write to them and tell them how ridiculous their excuses sound. But another part of me wonders if it's worth it. What's the point of going over all this if they're just going to keep defending their actions? This is where things took an unexpected turn. Claire found out about the whole email exchange. She called me 2 days ago. Absolutely furious. Not with me, but with our parents. Apparently they were told that I had been in touch with her and accused her of abandoning them for her career. Can you believe it? They basically blamed her for why they feel so alone now, as if she were the bad guy for, I don't know, having a life of her own. Claire said she is completely fed up with their guilt trips and manipulation. And then she shared something that really baffled me. She feels that now they are trying to use me and Rainey as pawns in their strange little "we're such good parents" redemption story. Here's the situation between Claire and me. We've never been very close. Growing up, she was the model child and I was the black sheep, and we were just different. She was the straight-A student, the successful one, the one who couldn't do anything wrong. Meanwhile, I was the one who always seemed to let them down. So yes, our relationship has always been a bit distant, but this phone call felt different. For the first time, Claire really acknowledged what I had been through. She apologized for not standing up for me back then. She admitted that she had been so focused on her studies and her own life that she hadn't really noticed how badly our parents were treating me. Hearing her say that and hearing her acknowledge it hit me in a way I hadn't expected. I had been harboring so much resentment towards her without even fully realizing it. And then she said something that completely blew my mind. She offered to help set up a college fund for Rainey herself. She said she would rather do that than allow our parents to use their money as some kind of leverage to worm their way back into our lives. I didn't even know what to say. I mean, Claire isn't exactly warm and fuzzy, so for her to offer that, it really took me by surprise. That phone call honestly shook me up. It didn't magically fix everything between us, but it felt like a small step in the right direction. For the first time in years, I felt like she really saw me and understood what I had been through. I know I will never forget what our parents did, but there was this strange feeling of relief hearing Claire acknowledge it and validate my pain. I've spent so much time feeling alone in all of this, but talking to her was a reminder that maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. As for my parents, I'm still undecided. Part of me just wants to cut ties completely and move on with my life. They had their chance to be parents, and they blew it. I have managed to build a life for Rainy, and for me that doesn't need them to feel complete or successful. But then there's this other part of me, this little voice that says, maybe you should at least hear them in person. Not for their sake, but for mine. Maybe it would give me some kind of closure. Maybe it's worth seeing if they have really changed. Although I'm skeptical. The problem is that I'm afraid that if I give them even an inch, they'll just go back to their old ways. I don't want to open that door only to get hurt again. At the same time, Rainy deserves to know her grandparents, right? I'm not saying they should be a big part of her life, but it would be good for her to have that connection. But I can't shake the feeling that letting them back in now, after all these years, would feel like I was accepting their attempts to rewrite history. They're not really asking for forgiveness, they're asking for validation. I keep going back and forth on whether it's worth the emotional energy, and honestly, it's been exhausting. So I guess I'm still figuring it out. I really appreciate all of you who have been following all this drama in my life. It means a lot to know that people care and understand what I'm going through. I just wish I had a clear answer, but for now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'll let you know what happens next, but for now, it looks like I'm still stuck in this limbo. Update 2. Wow. Things have derailed in ways I really didn't see coming. After my last update, I decided to take a step back. I didn't want to make rash decisions while I was still emotional. So I put my parents' email on the back burner and focused on my daily routine with Rainy. Taking her to school, bedtime stories, grocery shopping, just normal everyday stuff to keep my mind clear. But of course, life had other plans. Last weekend, completely out of the blue, my parents showed up at my apartment. No warning, no message, no call, nothing. Just a knock on the door while I was in the middle of making lunch for Rainy. At first, I thought it was a delivery, or maybe one of my neighbors. When I opened the door, there they were. My mom and dad standing there at my front door, looking more uncomfortable than ever. I was paralyzed. My first instinct was to slam the door in their faces, but before I could even react, Rainy came running up behind me. She looked between my legs, curious to know who she was, and they immediately latched onto that. My mom leaned over to her and started complimenting her and saying things like how much she looked like me at that age. It was so uncomfortable. They were acting like proud grandparents, but they have literally never been part of her life. I told Rainy to go back to the kitchen, and luckily she listened to me. I went outside, closed the door behind me, and just stared at them. My father started talking, saying that they were in town for a conference, and thought it would be a good opportunity to see me and Rainy, which, let's face it, was probably a lie. What kind of conference happens on a random weekend? They started with the apologies again. My father kept saying how sorry they were and how much they missed us. My mother, of course, started to cry. At first, I thought maybe she was being genuine, but the more she talked, the more it seemed like she was just trying to make me feel guilty so that I would forgive them immediately. They asked if we could go for lunch or coffee to talk properly. I wasn't going to accept that. I told them straight that turning up unannounced was crossing a major line. I also said that I didn't feel comfortable just sitting down and pretending that everything was fine. My father tried to argue, saying that they were just trying to make an effort and that I was being unfair. My mother intervened, asking me to just give them a chance, but I interrupted her. I told them that I needed time to think and that I wasn't going to make any decisions right then. Before they could say anything else, I turned around, went back inside, and locked the door behind me. I just stood there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened while Rainy kept asking questions from the kitchen. Who was it, Mommy? I honestly feel like I was ambushed in my own home. I understand that they are trying to make things right, but to just turn up like that was just so pushy and invasive. It's like they thought that a sudden visit would magically make everything better without any real conversation or effort, and the timing couldn't have been worse. I was finally starting to get some clarity, like maybe I was starting to figure out what I wanted to do about this whole thing, and then they just turn up out of the blue. Now I'm just confused and angry again. Part of me feels guilty about how I handled it, but then the other part of me is just furious. How do you go years without even calling, and then decide to show up at my door, uninvited, as if you're suddenly going to fix everything? It's like they want to fast forward through all the difficult parts and jump straight to the happy family reunion scene. I'm not ready for that. You can't just ignore someone for years and expect everything to be okay with a couple of hugs and a half-hearted apology. Later that night, just when I thought I could finally put all this out of my mind for a while, Claire called. Apparently, she had found out about the surprise visit and was furious. She said my parents had told her they were planning to patch things up with me and expected her to help smooth things over, as if she were their PR manager or something. Claire didn't hold back. She told them clearly to back off, to stop pressuring me and to let me deal with things at my own pace and on my own terms. Apparently that didn't go down at all well. The whole conversation turned into this massive argument, with my parents accusing Claire of being ungrateful and turning against the family, a classic diversionary tactic. They were trying to paint her as the villain for actually standing up for me. After that, Claire was pretty clear with me. She said she's fed up with their manipulations. She's seriously considering reducing contact with them, or maybe even cutting ties completely. She admitted that she is so tired of feeling like she has to manage their emotions, their guilt trips, their decisions. It's exhausting. She's also tired of being caught in the middle, which I totally understand. It's like they keep trying to drag her into their drama and it's wearing her down. Listening to Claire say all this was honestly a bit of a relief. Not in a, I'm glad she's miserable too kind of way, but in a, okay, maybe I'm not the only one who feels this way kind of way. For a long time, I felt like I was the only one dealing with their manipulation. Their constant attempt to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong, but now it's clear that they've been doing the same thing to Claire, just in their own twisted way. It's not exactly comforting because it honestly sucks that we've both had to deal with their behavior, but it makes me feel like I'm not crazy for feeling the way I do. I'm not alone in this. I don't know what the next step is yet, but at least now I know that Claire supports me and I support her. Maybe that's enough for now. Update 3. A few days have passed since my parents' surprise visit, and after much thought and going over it in my head, I finally made a decision. I decided to send them an email without holding back. I told them everything. I told them exactly how their rejection had affected me, how difficult it had been to raise Rainey on my own without their help. I made it clear that their sudden interest in us felt less like they really cared, and more like they were simply panicking, realizing that they were running out of time to fix things before it was too late. I told them that trust isn't rebuilt in a day, and that showing up unannounced was simply a gross violation of the boundaries I was trying to establish. It felt like they were trying to rush things in a way that wasn't fair to me. And of course I told them I wasn't going to stand by and let them spread lies about me to family and friends. If they really wanted to make things right, they needed to respect my space and let me process everything in my own time, not rush me into a fake reunion. The response? Well, to no one's surprise, it was complete silence, not a single word. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. My parents have always been the type to simply avoid any kind of responsibility when things go wrong. They have never been good at acknowledging their mistakes or facing difficult truths. I'm sure they'll just call me spiteful or accuse me of holding a grudge. They love using those words, but honestly, I'm tired of worrying about it. I spent so many years bending over backwards trying to please them, always worrying about what they thought of me. But no more. Now it's about me and protecting my peace, even if it means disappointing them. As for Claire, things are slowly but surely starting to improve. She's still a bit unstable, but I can tell we're both trying. She's been checking up on me more often, which feels really good. Honestly, it's not like everything is perfect or we're suddenly super close again, but it's progress, and that counts. She even sent Rainey a big box of books and art supplies, and that was such a thoughtful gesture. Rainey absolutely loved it, and I could tell that Claire put a lot of thought into selecting everything. Claire also admitted that she is still dealing with guilt about how things played out between us. I think she's starting to understand more now how much her silence hurt me back then, but what matters is that she's committed to being a better sister and a better aunt from now on, and that honestly means a lot to me. It's not like we're going to be best friends overnight or anything, but I still have some hope. I think we're both on the right track, even if it's slow. Rainey and I are doing really well. She's so excited about starting kindergarten, and I'm focusing on creating the best life I can for her. We have a strong support system with friends who genuinely care about us, and for now, that's enough. So where do I go from here? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and one thing I've realized is that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Just because I let go of the anger and the hurt doesn't mean I have to invite toxic people back into my life. It's about finding my own peace, and sometimes that means setting boundaries and walking away for good. Maybe later on I'll be open to revisiting things with my parents, but for now, today is not that day. I'm choosing peace over chaos, and honestly, it feels like the right decision. I know from the comments I've read that some of you have different views on this, and that's totally fine. Everyone has their own perspective, and I'm not here to change anyone's mind. It wasn't easy for me to go through all of this, and I've honestly questioned myself a lot. That's why I was constantly wondering whether I made the right decision or not, but at the end of the day, I had to do what felt right for me and my family. So thank you to all of you who have been understanding, who offered advice, and even to those who disagreed. Your comments and messages have really helped me think things through, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts, and I guess this is where the story ends. I'm moving forward, and I'm ready to focus on the people who really matter in my life. So goodbye for now. Thanks again for being here.